This is Sky News Today. Coming up, the latest on the war in Ukraine as the country is hit by a series of Russian airstrikes. I'll be speaking to someone there. Welcome back. Now, more on the top story this hour. At least 7 people have been killed after Russia launched a series of drone and missile attacks on Ukraine overnight, targeting the country's energy infrastructure. Well, let's speak now to Michael Bociurkiw. He's a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council and a global affairs analyst. He is in Kyiv right now. Michael, first of all, I know you've experienced these airstrikes many times, but this we know much worse than what we've witnessed in the last 3 months. Tell us about your experience.
Sure. Well, I think this is about as bad as it gets. We're talking about 120 missiles, 90 drones, of which 140 were shot down. And you mentioned the deaths. I can't say exactly where I was at the time, but I can tell you it was a very strategic area of Kyiv. And the bang from one of the missiles being shot down was so loud, it actually set car alarms off. And then it was followed by several others. So a lot of panic. People are not sure in some cities of Ukraine when electricity will come back, when water will come back, for example, in Odessa. And Saima, what's really different here as well is the missile struck very far west in Ukraine, as far west as Bociurkiw, the ski resort, near some EU borders. So that's a first as well. But yeah, really very hard targeted power infrastructure.
Yeah, and we know that this was targeting largely the energy infrastructure there. You've been without water and power for on and off for some time.
Kyiv isn't too bad, but it's really Odessa, the world port city, there where I'm usually based. No power, no water for most of the city. In fact, city officials have just announced that there will be no school Monday and Tuesday, and the generators are out again. This is what a lot of small businesses rely on to get by. So that's again going to be an added strain on small business to keep things going without reliable electricity.
Yeah, and with the cold, of course, there's such a concern, isn't there? But if we look at the wider issues, recently, of course, we've had some criticism from President Zelensky, Michael, for Chancellor Olaf Scholz speaking with Vladimir Putin. He feels that that's not the appropriate way to approach the Kremlin, that there should be a continued isolation. But Olaf Scholz was saying that he's just simply trying to find a path to some kind of ceasefire negotiation. You've been involved in negotiations in the past in that region as when you were head of the OSCE. Isn't that the best path forwards and the likeliest?
Well, I noticed Chancellor Scholz, after what happened today, given the severity of the strikes, has backtracked a bit. And he's reinforced the message that Ukraine should decide what's going to happen on its own terms. But yeah, I mean, when I was spokesperson of the OSCE, we had many agreements going back as far back as 2014, 2015, red lines that were set. And on each one, including the Minsk Accords, the Russians would violate them. And they are the ones who decided they don't want an OSCE special monitoring mission here to monitor what's going on in Ukraine and shut it down. So I don't think anyone should be deluding themselves on getting a deal with the Russians that will be honored. And one more quick thing, of course, is that whatever country, if there is a deal, whatever country or group of countries secure this deal or guarantee it, they will be on the hook for coming in and helping to defend Ukraine should Russia not live up to its commitments.
Yeah, and no doubt that's resounding in governments around the world, not least, of course, in the US. While I have you, Michael, let's talk about people's concerns or thoughts down there on the ground now that you're in the capital, Kyiv, on what they make of a new Trump presidency and what that means for Ukraine.
Sure. Well, what happened today probably could have been either prevented or drastically reduced had President Biden given the okay for those Anglo-French Storm Shadows missiles to be used to strike at the bases where these projectiles come from. In terms of the Trump administration, looking at what he said, what his vice president has said, some of the controversial picks is that we actually could be surprised, Saima. We could see Trump thinking, well, maybe Putin doesn't want to deal with me, And there's some people here saying that maybe if that happens, Trump will give everything Ukraine that they've been asking for. Let's see what happens. But I think the Biden administration may actually use this window of opportunity left to give Ukraine a bit more of an upper leg in terms of striking back at Russia.
Michael, still have a bit more time with you, and I was just reading that these overnight attacks triggered a defence response from Poland as well. Poland being impacted by all this too.
Yes, absolutely, because the missiles struck very far to the west. And, thank goodness they did, because there have been now a few times since you and I have been speaking, or the past, years, that Russian missiles and drones have actually transited Polish airspace, and some remnants of those have fallen. And there's hardly a peep from NATO. So let's be clear on this. Poland is a NATO country. It has, its airspace has been violated, but not much of a response. So I think now they're taking a much more robust response, as well as speaking out more politically, telling the rest of the European partners that we have to stand with Ukraine, give them everything they need, because this war could come more and more towards Europe.
Okay, for now, Michael Bociurkiw, thanks very much indeed for joining us live from Kyiv. Stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you.